right, continuing on with the TMCC Library Open Genealogy Lab Outstanding Guest Speaker Series, today we are pleased to present Claire Wilson. Claire has a Bachelor's of Science degree in journalism from Ohio University and a Master in Library Science from Kent State University. She started at the Geauga County, Ohio Archives and Records Center as an assistant archivist in 2001 and became the records manager in 2014 and supervisor in 2018. She will start today's presentation with the history of Geauga County Archives and Records Center and share with you the vast amount of genealogical resources available at their facility and website. So I'd like to offer a warm virtual welcome to Claire.
Thank you. You've pronounced it very close. It's pretty good. It's Geauga County, a soft G. But that was still pretty good. Anyway, the Geauga County Archives and Records Center is located in Chardon, Ohio. We're about 60 miles east of Cleveland and below Lake Erie, and what is commonly known as Northeast Ohio and what is historically known as the Western Reserve. Geauga became a county in 1806. It was one of the 3 million acres from the Connecticut Western Reserve Company, land company, that they bought and populated. Our Geauga, incidentally, is Native American for raccoon, which were popular and still populous around here. Our biggest and only probably crime is we had a hanging in 1823 of Benjamin Wright Jr., who was hanged for the stabbing death of Zophar Warner. It was a kind of a bar brawl type thing, but that's our capital crime. Also in 1823, we had the first Geauga County Fair, and the Geauga County Fair is the longest running fair in Ohio. It skipped around a little bit around World War II, but it was still continuous. By 1824, the county has had 3 courthouses. The third one is this colonial one here that ultimately housed all of county government, and the county records were fortunately all in a safe that when a fire went through the town and destroyed all the way up through the courthouse and up to the Methodist Church, which still stands from the 1830s. The records were able to be saved by the citizens who ran in and got the safe, and we now have pretty much very close to a full run of county government records. The ending of that courthouse led us to our current courthouse, which was built in 1871. It only houses currently the courts, or the common pleas court, and the clerk of court's office on the 3 floors in the building. And part of our claim to fame, if we have fame, is we had the Mormons ventured here in 1831 until 1838 on their way from New York and ultimately into Utah. They established a city. Well, no, I'm sorry, not a city, but a village called what is now Kirtland, Ohio. And it's actually in Lake County. But during those years, Lake County belonged to Geauga County. And actually, because of that, the break, all of Lake County's records prior to 1840 are in the county government or in the Geauga County Archives and Record Center. Now, the center started in 1997. It was an effort to consolidate all the records into one place, where prior they were in a variety of places that were not environmentally sound by any means. After getting them all together, we ultimately have about 5,000 boxes of files, well over 1,000 really large ledger books and record books, maps, blueprints, aerial photos, glass plates, notes, easily some surveys, and actually other tax maps and drawings. It's been governed by the Geauga County Commissioners, the Geauga County Records Commission, and the Geauga County Microfilm Board as who we answer to, or who I answer to. At the archives, we get a lot of walk-ins and we get a lot of requests for our genealogy. Our biggest holders our largest amount of records belong to the Clerk of Court's office, and then next probably Probate Court. Those are our two most used genealogy records as well. Also, we have the recorder's deeds and auditors and treasurers tax maps and tax records, which are often used during historical house research too, as a part of the genealogy that some people want to explore. The Clerk of Courts, we have from 1806 to 1955 paper records here. They're all in ledger books, similar to what's being shown, and record books. So these are the originals. From 1997 to 2010, we have those in file form. The gap from here is on microfilm. We have those records, but they are on microfilm and they're available at the Clerk of Court's office only. But among the Clerk of Court's records, we have civil court and then criminal court records that covers divorces, chancery, trespass, murder, just any litigation you could think of, and it's all open in public record. We have here our direct and reverse indexes, which direct us either through plaintiff or through defendant, where all this information is recorded. Our appearance and execution dockets are the records that they use to open a case and keep track of fees and the like. The journals we use for journal orders or journal entries. So court orders get noted down in there, and then the final records are generally the whole story. It's what would have been in a file, but it was recorded ultimately into one of the ledger books. It's very interesting because I've learned that that even in the past were pretty litigious. And I was surprised at the amount of divorces that were granted. But the interesting especially the interesting thing is some of the criminal considered crimes, like, of course, stealing a horse to pay for some school fees. And then she ultimately got her horse back, which was good. But that's our clerk of court records. Our second most popular item is probate court. Probate court is responsible for birth and death records, marriage records, wills, estates, name changes, and guardianships. And they're also responsible for adoptions, but adoptions aren't public records. So we do not allow access to those, but we do store them here, some here. The birth and death records are only go back to 1867 in Ohio, because that is where that's when they officially started keeping track. In larger cities, they do have some city indexes that go prior to 1867, but in Geauga County, that's as far back as we go. We stop at 1909, and at the public health department takes over from there, and we would go through final statistics. Our marriage records go all the way back to 1806. They include license and records, and then they, of course, combine them at some point. We have them all the way up to 2005. We have the hard paper or hard record or hard copy, excuse me, that's what I'm reaching for, hard copy down here. And if you'd want photocopies or anything like that, you would contact our office. We have the probate records and the estate records. We have the records as recorded in ledgers, and then we have the original files, which are very interesting because it includes all the original receipts and inventories taken, and estates and sales and taxes, and other very personal, interesting things like that. With inventories, you really get to see, in the old ones, you get to see the itemization of all the stuff that people owned, and down to the animals, down all the way down to how many plates and silverware they owned in their home. My favorite is when they do the books, because they write down every title of all the books from 1803 or 1823 or whenever the death happened, and I copy those and look them up and try and see if I could read them or they'll be interesting to me. Our second, probably most popular group is the recorder's office. We have the deed records going back from 1798 and up to 1965 down here. Geauga County broke off from Trumbull in 1806, and the first 2 volumes of our records, of the deed records, are transcribed copies of records available in Trumbull County. So we have the earliest transactions that have happened in regarding land in the Western Reserve that became Geauga County. It's very popular around here for historic houses. Our historical society has a plaque that you can apply for if your house is considered a century home, so over 100 years. And the deed records are required. A deed chain is required showing ownership back to 100 years or more, proving that the house has been standing there and that who's owned it. In addition to that, we have auditors and tax treasurer records. They're called tax duplicates, and they're the tax maps. Are tax duplicates, which are what people were charged and paid for in taxes. Go back to 1810 to 2006, and we have tax maps where they plotted out land ownership as early as 1820, and then up to 1980 down here. The tax duplicates help people with their historic home research by stating when a house appears in the tax duplicates, usually a house or a barn or any dwelling or mill or building that appears. And we can trace it very close to when a building shows up and has not been there before. There's usually a increase in property tax that went from year to year, a significant increase that shows that some building had been built on the land. If we're lucky, it will say house and barn next to it, or house noted next to it. But most of the time, we have to just guess with that increase in property tax. The taxes also come in personal property. The personal property is the cattle and horses and anything that they owned that moved, as opposed to a real property tax, which was the housing, which is a home or a building or a store or mill or the like. These maps that we have, they can also be seen online, all the way up to 1980, even farther, even more recent, to even more recent times, up on the county engineers site, the Geauga County Engineers website, under the tax map department. One of their engineers took all the maps that the county had and scanned them all in under their township name. So it's very easy to get to them, and you don't have to know necessarily specific lots or parcel numbers or things like that, but you can get to them through townships. Some of our not lesser known, but some of our smaller collections are Justice of the Peace records for townships. We have those from the 1800s, mid 1800s to the mid 1900s, depending on what township you're talking about. We have the early Supreme Court records when they traveled around from district to district. Naturalization records, which belong to the Clerk of Court's office and to Probate Court office. They split the duties. Those are very popular. They have, especially when they include a picture. Not all of them do, but they are very, very popular when they're discovered. We have aerial photos, so you can get the lay of the land back to 1937. We have to about 1996, but intermittently. We have 1937, 52, 66, 72, and 86 and 92. I'm pretty sure. The other holdings we have that include some historical books that we have around here that are available through us, some other maps that you can get to and blueprints are all on our website. Under what the website is the areas for research, but the site name is Holdings. But you'll see that when we get to the site here. And let's go to the site. This is Geauga County Archives and Records Center website under the Geauga County departments.
Claire, we're still seeing your PowerPoint.
Oh, okay. Shoot. Well, I bet that I can't get past the PowerPoint. Okay. What I'll tell you is from the website. Again, it's excuse me. From the website, you can get to history and research for genealogy purposes. You can get to history and research, and I was under the impression I could get to the website, but I needed a screenshot apparently. But it tells you there's a brief history of Geauga County that goes more in depth as to who settled it, the many people who came here during its history, what's happened, of course, since the fire, and we've had a lot. And on that, you can go to a timeline, which breaks down the history pretty quickly in timeline form. It's pretty basic. But also, there's records for further research. And on that site, there is a list of all our records that are public records. They have links to indexes so that our birth and death records, our genealogical society has indexed all those records and put them online. So for easy access, they did the same thing with our estate records. So you can find out the will or estate record going back to 1823 if need be. They also did that with some cemetery records. So they indexed cemetery, all the cemeteries in Geauga County, and put that online. And we have links to those so that you know what to contact, or what, if you want copies of them, you can ask specifically which record you're looking for. There is a link to how to do century home research, and how to create your deed chain and your tax record chain, and who to contact for that, because the Plaque program is not through the Geauga County government. It's a part of Geauga County's Historical Society. And what else is on there? We also have some links to sites, other sites that would be of interest to researchers. The Western Reserve Historical Society is pretty expansive and famous around here for research. We have the Ohio State Historical Society, the Ohio History Connection. We have a link to. Of course, you can go through the Geauga County departments and get to any of the Geauga County government records that you would want to, which would also get you to our clerk of courts records and probate records, recorders and auditors and treasurers. And but I would say the quickest way to contact us would be through the website and through the email. We are right in the middle of, or at the very, very, very beginning of moving to a new building. So all the contact information will be changing very soon. So with the exception of the emails. So that's probably the easiest way to contact us if you have any questions or need anything. So that's the Geauga County Archives and Records Center. This is our brief history. It's written by the woman who actually set up the Record Center, Barry Euler Stiff, Dr. Barry Euler Stiff. She was the person in charge when this Record Center was started and set it up as it is. The history is pretty thorough and much more than what I gave you. So much more than what I gave you. Our timelines. It's a very quick rundown of the county, and Geauga County's place in Ohio history, in Northeast Ohio history. This here is what I was talking about, trying to describe. This is a list of all the records that we have that are available for research, including books and road records from the engineer's office. We do have some newspapers, a short run, but a pretty good run just the same. For our probate records and for what would be considered vital statistics, this would take you to an index that it said the Genealogy Society created. It gives you a list of the names, locations, page numbers, and volume numbers for anybody who you're looking for in the Geauga County area. It's come in pretty handy for me for answering a lot of genealogy questions. We have the index also for marriage records up to 1919, cemeteries, and estate records, probate, wills, and estates. And
before you go, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Go ahead.
Can you go back to that one? Could you go ahead and click through on those, and so we can kind of see the other ones that right over there.
Okay, there's our marriage index. It's all on one page, so it's a matter of scrolling down. Set up by brides and grooms. These are popular. Goes all the way through, of course, set up by bride, by groom, date of license, date of marriage records, which aren't necessarily the same, and they don't necessarily have a record if they have a license or vice versa. If they could get the information about the township and parents, they also noted that. It's a very, very thorough index, and again, I use it a lot. Our next one is the cemeteries. This is all the cemeteries, all the public cemeteries in Geauga County. you can search by the cemetery itself, or yeah, you can look by name, and it'll tell you what cemetery they're in, and then you could contact us if you want to know where that cemetery is and where if you want to visit it, or excuse me, see if they have a stone or not, or if they even were recorded. Indexes to probate. Our probate records are under miscellaneous documents, are actual files that were created at the time of somebody's probating their will. It's organized by names, of course, and then the file numbers were given unique file names, given their last name, using their last initial. And you can see here that a criminal is in there. For a brief period, Probate Court took care of criminal case files. Criminal cases were primarily done by the clerk of courts, but probate did have some criminal cases in there for just a few years. Civil, meaning they could be anything from a name change to guardianship to an adoption to land sales. Permissions for land sales makes up a lot of our probate records. When they say the probate ledgers, these are recorded in the books. There are duplicates. There's some files that have the original files and a recorded file, but they're not completely identical. So you may have one and not the other. So we check both when people are looking for estates. And in addition to other indexes we have for more recent records, we check those thoroughly before we say there's no record available. This quickly takes you to all people of interest in Geauga County. The Geauga Historical Society, which does the Historic House Plaque program. Board of Commissioners, which is who we're a part of. The Geauga County Archives and Records Center is a part of Geauga County government. In fact, the Records Center stores the lesser used records of about 35 departments, but they're not all public record by any means. What I've told you about is all public record. So you can see those here. Come here or ask for copies or request to thumb through them, all down here in the archives. The Geauga County Public Library, the Chardon Library in particular, has a genealogical society department that we work very closely with. And if we do not have it or we don't think it would be found in our records, we often direct them to the Geauga County Public Library. It's very thorough. I work with the women recently. Actually, I had a tour and it's very nice, and they're very nice, easy to work with and helpful. The others, I guess, the FamilySearch. FamilySearch actually has a lot of our probate records and naturalization records and some clerk records online. They've come to Geauga County often and get our records. And for the time period, especially for the Mormons, for their time that they spent here and the history that they've been recorded in, meaning that their court records, there's litigation, obviously cases, probate records. Joseph Smith actually got married here. We have that marriage record. So they have a lot of our stuff online, so you can see that for free, but they don't have nearly as much as we have available. The Lake County Historical Society is where you would go to look for records beyond 1840. It cut off the northern half of the county, created its own county due to a dispute over where the seat of the county seat should be. So Lake County broke off in 1840, and that's where certain records of their townships just begin. Everything else prior to 1840 belongs to us, and it's down here in the archives. Leadership Geauga is a partnership that the county is a part of. They do it's a class. It's a class. It's a class of some business owners and some government officials and some local people who want to be active in the community, and they get a taste of county government, and they often come to us actually looking for an archivist for their scavenger hunt, but also looking for prior records. The State Ohio Historical Society is obviously the state for the state. They have some records of ours, but if you want to see the state records regarding Geauga County's activities, they're stored there. State of Ohio, the great state of Ohio. Of course, you can look around and see what the Ohio government is doing. And then the Western Reserve Historical Society is the big local historical society that encompasses the history of the entire Western Reserve, which goes from east of us, east of Geauga, including Ashtabula and Trumbull, and goes all the way over under Lake Erie to about Lorain, which is what's considered west side of Cleveland. They have some of our original records. They fill in a couple of gaps with tax records for us, but for the most part, we have full runs of all our records. So speaking of historical society and the Century Home Plaque, if and it's popular around here, um, you can get a plaque stating again that you're a century home or a century building, and this gives you the instructions on how to get the plaque and how to create a deed chain and where some of the records are located in the county and who you need to contact to get them. Um, Again, the records that we use are the tax duplicates and the deeds, which are also often used for genealogy and uh, used for genealogy. That's
Claire,
the
Claire,
end of
this
the
is
sentence.
Claire. This is a fascinating topic. You know, the thought of researching your family's history in a home that's over 100 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine, based on what you're saying, that if you do prove that your home is been there for over 100 years, and you've done the research, I assume that it does a listing of every family that's lived in that home over the last 100 years.
Yes, that's your deed chain. Um, the deed chain is the proof of ownership of that land in that house over 100 years or well over 100 years. You can go all the way back to 1798 here, or you can just go back to what would be 100 now, 1922. um, it's often leads to people researching the families in their house, not necessarily for their genealogy purposes, but they want to know about the family and uh, the owner who lived in the house as much as they can. So that it leads to genealogy of not just personal nature,
So is
which
there
is
a place,
interesting.
since obviously nobody wants to reduplicate work that somebody else has already done,
Right.
is there a place where, like, let's say, you find your ancestor in your county, and on a certain particular date, like let's say 1930,
Hmm.
and you find out based on the census that they did not rent the home, they're owning the home.
Hmm.
And you have no idea whether that home is over 100 years old or not. Well, maybe in 1930, if the house was there. In the 1920 census, obviously, then it would be over 100 years old. But how would you know? Is there a place that you can go? Like, is there a database where you can enter in your family's name and it'll tell you if somebody's already done the research on a home that's over 100 years old that your family may have lived in?
Um, no, they're in the database. The Historical Society does keep these applications listed, but usually the only way you know that that it is a century home is it gets a century home plaque. Um, and then you hear if you're curious, stories of people around you and or from neighbors and the like. But there is no database, unfortunately.
Yeah, and you know what? That property research, I think, is a really underutilized subject in genealogy. And
Mhm.
and actually it's something that I myself have been interested in for many years. And I've been, since I'm the collection development librarian here for our genealogy research room, I've actually purchased several books on how to research your ancestors' property,
Mhm.
because it's really a fascinating part of your family history, and certainly very interesting to read about if you publish your family history book. So I kind of wanted to take this moment to kind of point out to the class that if you're interested in this, our library does have some wonderful books that will teach you how to do that. And I am so glad you brought this subject up, Claire, because I think it's really something that we all need to kind of at least be aware of. And it really does add a lot to your ancestors' story if you could tell the history of their home as well as the history of them as well.
Yes, yes. My favorite records from the Century Home researches are actually the tax duplicates and then the personal tax duplicates. because I think it's just interesting to know that they were renting their home, but they definitely owned their horses or owned their cattle, or how many cattle they owned, or it's just it builds a picture for me.
Oh, absolutely. Because, I think one of the things I hear most often from people who are writing their family histories is, well, what do I write about? I mean, like, their birth date, their death date, the day they got married, the day they have kids. But there's so much more in the history of your family's lives other than just those birth, marriage, death, those types of information. And a lot of times, like you said, that the fascinating part of doing your research is piecing together the many different things, like you said in the will. It goes down to how many plates they had, or how many books they had, and what books they had, named by title. That's a fascinating part. It kind of gives you an insight as to what kind of a person your ancestor was.
Right. I love looking at those.
So, you mentioned, how popular each record set was. What is your typical genealogy researcher come in when they come into your archive? Is there a typical genealogical researcher? I mean, what types of questions do they ask?
What'll get them in? Well, the most popular question is, do you have anything on John Smith and Thompson? And then we have to, of course, narrow that down to, well, we do have some records. We can check, see if they had a divorce, or if they had, if they're a part of litigation. And of course, if they had a will and estate, and we have to get them down to our record series. But what gets people in here the most probably is the evidence of a divorce. So using our clerk of courts records, and looking for their case files or their cases, that case is probably the most popular request we get. Second would be an estate, and they hope they can get some juicy information. Sometimes it's nothing more than some permission to sell land, but it does certify that they own land. But that's what usually gets our actually past and present researchers in here. Divorce from the past, and we get a lot of walk-ins for divorces from the present too. So that's what a lot of people are coming in for and asking.
Okay. Now you mentioned that some of your record sets only start and end on a certain date. I think you talked a little bit about where the gaps are, but what about, where would you go for the records before your start dates?
There are no records before our start dates.
Oh, okay.
Everything is here.
So you can't go to I assume there are probably churches in your community that.
Yes, if there are some churches, you could go to the Western Reserve, but then the Western Reserve Historical Society for earlier records. But for specifically Geauga, we have the earliest records.
Okay, understood. Okay. Now, how, besides reaching out to you in email, is there like a form that if anybody here in the class would like to reach out to you to have some research done? Is there a form online, or is there just simply email you directly? How?
Just email us directly.
Okay.
There's no form. Just tell us as much as you can about what you're looking for. Try to make it as specific as possible. We can't give you everything on Thompson Township in 1920. That's just not feasible. But we can look up John Smith in Thompson Township around the 1920s and maybe where he was buried. So just email me.
Okay. And I assume that you don't have specific family histories there in the archives?
No, that would be in the Geauga County Public Library.
Understood. Okay. Wonderful. All right. And I'm still waiting. If anybody would like to unmute their microphone and ask Claire a question directly, please feel free to do so. Okay. And Claire, I was at the beginning of your presentation, I was putting those links into the chat box for our announcements. But did you mention, I maybe just missed it. What is the size of your collection?
It's about 5,000 square feet.
Wow. That is amazing.
Yes.
Yeah. Archive science is just a fascinating thing. I assume that you've got all the temperature controlled rooms and acid-free boxes and all that.
Yes, we've done what we can for our retrofitted building. We have reboxed things in acid-free boxes, reinforced some of our looser records in phase boxes. We keep an eye on the humidity, but we can't really control it, and we don't have any control over the heat. That belongs to the maintenance department, and they've locked us out of our thermostat. But we do have we don't have sprinklers, but we do have fire extinguishers. And for our records room, where all our pretty much our primary records, where we keep all the ledgers and paper-based records, we use water because they can be retrieved from water, as opposed to, say, the chemical fire extinguishers that we use out in our work area for our compute that wouldn't mess with our computers. Hopefully, in our new building, we are going to have more control over the environment. Definitely sprinklers. And be able to rebox some more items that will allow more access to them.
Does your archive also have artifacts, or is it just strictly paper records?
It's paper records mostly.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm anybody, the class, do you have any questions for Claire? Looks like you've answered all the questions, Claire. I mean, unusual for my students not to have questions. So, okay, well, we'll give it just a few more seconds and see if anybody them comes up with a question. And Claire, do you have a moment to show them the Western, what was it called? The Western
Reserve Historical Society?
Do you mind sharing that website with them?
Yes.
That sounds like a pretty important resource to know about.
Yes, for genealogy in Northeast Ohio. It's very good.
Hi, this is Wendy.
Yes.
I'm from Reno, Nevada, and I have family that was in Davis County. So would the best place for me to go to look for items again, it would be Davis County, and then the state archives, is that?
Yes.
Okay.
To go with the county, and then secondary goes to the state.
Is there a Western Reserve or a Southern Reserve for them too, like you have here?
I don't know for sure.
Okay. All right. So I can ask that question to the librarian there.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Claire. I appreciate your presentation.
Okay, so maybe you could kind of poke around that. Like, what about research and collections? That one looks interesting.
Yes, they do. Yeah, I've been there and been there during uh for some of their um exhibits, and it's very nice. I could spend all day there. But you can search the collections, which is very nice. In fact, I wonder, I'm going to do something here. They have a good, okay. I knew they had um, things about Geauga County, but they also have uh, some of our original records. But you can also contact them. Um, what was hmm, didn't want that. Here you could spend a lot of time, so much time going through trying to find I have a interest in fashion and fashion history. So that's why the dress stood out to me. But I didn't realize I can get this close though. Oh, I learned something new. And what else? If you want to, is that home? Yeah, I guess so. Okay. Let's see what else. Okay, that's what I was looking for. The Historical Society, uh, the Museum and Research Library are a part of a group that they have. Del Hair Farm and Village is a kind of a live live historical city where they reenact uh, some uh, village life. They offer programs and things for schools and for um, other groups. It's I participated in one where they reenacted the Underground Railroad, and it was oddly, surreally authentic, I think, or it felt like it.
That's one of the advantages to having so many wonderful guest speakers here in our class is that you have the knowledge of local resources that, we as far away trying to do research there,
Hmm.
don't have the advantage of knowing. So this is wonderful. I mean, I was not even aware of this particular resource.
Oh, they're very very good. I go around occasionally and look around, and uh, they're probably they're the second place I would go before I hit the state for history and genealogy.
Well, that's a really good recommendation. So I'm so glad you showed us this resource. Okay. Let's see here. So we'll give just a few. We'll just give the class a few more seconds here to see if they have any questions, and if not, we'll go ahead and say thank you. So we'll just give it just a few more moments. Was there anything else, Claire, that you would like to share with us?
No, I think I gathered all I could.
Okay. Okay, well, great. All right. Well, if you don't mind going back to that slide with your email, we'll kind of like end it with the way to contact you.
There.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay. So I don't see any questions in the chat box. So Claire, I assume that all their questions were answered during your presentation, and that was a wonderful presentation. We certainly appreciate it. I know I learned a lot.
Thank you.
So with that, before I click on the stop recording button, I want to remind everybody, if there's anything in the chat box that you want, please download it before you log off today. And of course, we still have another hour and a half left of class. If you're new to the class today for the first time, the second half of class is always a lot of fun and it's very interesting. We work on our trees as a group, so I encourage and invite all of you to stay for the next hour. And if you'd like to leave at this point in time, you can just click the red in button, and that'll take you out of today's session. And I want to say thank you very much, Claire, and thank you to all the people who logged in today. And I will be in touch, Claire, very soon with a copy of the recording. And once again, I want to thank you for letting us record today's session. And we'll be putting it on our school YouTube channel, and I'll be sending you the link very shortly.
You're very, very welcome, and thank you.